So again, welcome to our Gegenüber talk, presented by the Goethe-Institut North America. My name is Tatjana Brode, and Gegenüber is our digital transatlantic magazine. And this event is part of our series Literature Across Borders. We are honored to welcome the German author Helene Bukowski, who will be reading from her work and joining in conversation with Shelley Pomerance, a broadcaster, interviewer, and translator based in Montreal. Helene Bukowski is born in Berlin in 1993. She studied at the Hildesheim Literature Institute in Germany. In addition to writing, she leads creative writing workshops. Her debut novel, Milk Teeth, Milchzähne in German, for which she was nominated for various awards, was published in 2019, has been translated into French and English, and is currently being adapted for film. So, thank you all again for joining us, and let's start.
Thank you, Tatjana, and welcome to Helene. Nice to meet you. Well, not exactly in person, but almost.
Kind of. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
For people who haven't read the book yet, I'm just going to give a little introduction just so people know what we're talking about. So this novel is about a young woman, Skalde, and her mother, Edith, who live a very isolated life. Basically, they're outcasts. They exist on the edge of a forest. This is a time of climate crisis. At first, they're in a very thick fog, and when the fog lifts, then the heat is extreme. The few people who are around them are, for the most part, hostile, and there's very little food to eat. There are some large dogs, there are rabbits, but many animals have been killed, and there's not much else in the way of animal life. One day, a little girl appears coming out of the forest. Her name is Maisis, and Skalde decides to take her under her wing. My first question for you is, could you explain the title for us, Milk Teeth?
Yeah, I think there are two ways to talk about it. Because, if you think about milk teeth for a long time, or I don't know, then you realize it's kind of brutal. You're a child and then you lose your teeth. So I really like the symbolic of it. And also it's symbolic for growing up because, you get older, then you lose your teeth. And then I also find it interesting because if your mother is breastfeeding you, you also have your teeth, they grow. So, and this is also a brutal process. So that's on the one hand. And the other hand, it's in the book, milk teeth, they appear also in the book. So the people who live there, they have this, I don't know how you say it, but they say if you don't lose your milk teeth, you're not part of our community. So they just chose like this characteristic to, it's like, people say you don't have the right skin color. And in this book, it's just like milk teeth. It's kind of random, but these characteristics, they're always random.
And,
so
and Edith, for example, she never loses her milk teeth.
Yeah, and in the real world, so in our world, sometimes they don't lose the milk teeth. So
it's almost like she's identified as a witch in a way because hasn't lost her milk teeth.
Totally right. It has something fantastic about it, but yeah, it's also real. So I like that about it, and that's why I chose the title, I think, because there are, different layers to it. And I think that's always good if you have a title that's not just something, but that is more behind it.
Some people have called it a fairy tale, your book, and some people call it a dystopic or post-apocalyptic novel. What do you think about these labels?
So I think if you say it's a dystopian, you push it away too much, because then it's like it's in the future and it doesn't have that much to do with our reality. And for me, it's more like it's our world, but in a different light, kind of. So it's very close, but I changed little things. And I think also because people say it's too magical, or yeah, it's like a fairy tale. I think if you look at our world closely, it has also so much magical things happen. So yeah, but I think I'm fine with it because, you know, if you write a book, then people will put labels on it. So you put it in the world. So yeah, but I think if I would describe it by myself, I think I wouldn't use any kind of that labels. Does that make sense?
Yes, sounds fair to me. When did you write this book? Did you write it? I mean, it has such a feeling of the pandemic about it, because of all the isolation and the fear of others, and there's a kind of bird flu going on. Did you write it during or before the pandemic or after?
No, that's funny because, you know, I wrote it before that. So it came out in Germany 2019. But to write it, I went to a house in the countryside in Germany because, you know, I studied creative writing and everybody was like, I write a novel, I write a novel. And I was like, no, I'm more into short stories. But then I had this one short story and I presented it in my class and everybody was like, we want to know more about it because it's like the strange world. So I kept on writing, and then I was like, maybe this is a novel. So but then I had a lot of crisis, and I didn't know how to write the whole book. And then in our university, we had the opportunity to go to the countryside, to the house from Walter Kompowski. It's a German author. He's already dead, but his wife lived still in the house, and she offered young students to come to her house and just write. So I lived with her in this house for, I think the first time when I came there was like 2 months. And I said to all my friends, don't text me, don't, so you can just write me letters. And I really, you know, just wrote the book. So I think that was a really good experience to get the right atmosphere for the book. It was like my little pandemic before the real pandemic. But yeah, I wrote it before. But it's interesting now because then it came out also in French and everybody was like, oh, it's so, yeah, it reminded them of the pandemic. And I like that it's, you know, it's still, yeah.
It's out in several languages. It's out in Spanish as well.
Yeah, in English and Macedonian
Oh,
and
Macedonian. Wow.
yeah, that and Spanish. Yeah, I already said Spanish. Yeah, so
Maybe before we go any further, maybe you would read from it, and just so people can hear what it sounds like. And we'll try and read a few passages during the interview. So you'll read we're going to read chapter 5 first. You're going to read it in German, of course, and then I'll read it in English. And these are very short chapters, but just to give people an idea.
Yeah, I think that's because also, you know, I love short stories. So I think you can still see it in the book because the chapters are
Yes,
really
definitely.
short.
You like short stories and short sentences.
Yeah, that's true.
We can talk about that after.
So 5 oder 5. An manchen Tagen kam es vor, dass Möwen aus dem Himmel stürzten. Wir fanden sie verrenkt im Gras. Die Gefieder wie angekohlt, oft mit entzündeten Stellen am Bauch oder an den Gelenken der Flügel. Edith begrub die Kadaver in unserem Garten. Dabei rezitierte sie Verse, von denen ich mir jeden einzelnen einprägte. Noch immer könnte ich sie wiedergeben, aber wer macht sich hier noch etwas aus Gedichten? Auf die Beerdigung folgten immer Tage, an denen Edith nicht aufstand. Während sie bewegungslos auf ihrer Matratze lag, weder schlief noch wach war, versuchte ich, in ihrer Rufweite zu bleiben. Ich brachte ihr Essen oder malte für sie etwas auf die Papierservietten, die ich in der Küche gefunden hatte. Wenn ich sie ansprach, reagierte sie nicht. An besseren Tagen durfte ich ihr ein nasses Tuch bringen und es auf ihr Gesicht legen.
Thank you. And here it is in English, chapter 5. On some days, it was as if the seagulls were dropping out of the sky. We would find them twisted in the grass, their feathers scorched, and often with inflamed patches on their bellies or on their wing joints. Edith buried the carcasses in our garden. She recited rhymes while she did this. I memorized every single one of them. I could recite them now, but who here still cares about poetry? These burials were always followed by days when Edith wouldn't get up. While she lay motionlessly on her mattress, neither asleep nor awake, I tried to keep within calling distance of her. I brought her food or painted something for her on the paper napkins I found in the kitchen. When I spoke to her, she didn't respond. On better days, I was permitted to bring her a wet flannel and lay it over her face. How has your book been received in Germany?
So good, I think. Yeah, there are a lot of newspapers who, talked about it, wrote about it. I was nominated for different prizes, and I think the thing I liked most about it was that I had a lot of readings, so I could meet the people who read Milk Teeth and liked it, and to get to be in a conversation with them. And I think I didn't really think about it before I was writing it, what's going to happen if I will publish it. But I think it was good.
You're pleased with the reaction.
Yes, yeah.
You explore so many different themes in this book. There's motherhood, the relationship between Skjalde and Edith, migration, people who suddenly show up in this territory. The climate crisis is a big part of it, bigotry, animal suffering. And these are many themes that are a reflection of our current time. And I'm curious about motherhood, because you explore what it means to be a mother basically at the end of the world, or perhaps in our current time. Is this something that you see people around you exploring and questioning? Like, should one become a parent? This is a very complicated time, I think, to become a parent.
Yes, totally. And I think I talk a lot about my friends about it, but I think maybe for me, it's not just motherhood, it's about caring. So, and I think because that's what makes us human, I think, that we care for each other, that we empathetic, and that we have solidarity with each other, So, and I think it's, of course, there are Edith and Skjalde, the mother and the daughter, but then Skjalde finds this child, and she's like a mother for her, but also like a sister, and it's also like a caring position. And then, so I think that's like one part that I'm interested, and I think that's also something we have to remind ourselves every time, that caring is the thing we should do as humans. And also, if we care for things, that there will be a connection, and so we stop to be separate from each other. So I think it's a really good thing. And but I was interested in motherhood because the mother Edith, she is not really, some people say like, oh, she's such a bad mother, and I disagree kind of, because of course she can't really care about her daughter Skjalde, but what was important to me is that she has also her own story and her own trauma. And often when I was a child, I read books, and the mother was just just the mother and they didn't tell about her history. And and I kind of understand the character Edith, that she has her problems.
She has her own life.
Yeah. So and that's why I think she's not a bad mother, and I think we have also see people more for what they experienced, and what their history is, and to understand why.
Though Skjalde, in a way, is trying to do, which often happens, I think, in families, that she's trying to do a better job than her own mother has done. What she's doing with Mises.
Yeah, that's true. That's nice to put it.
Before I get you to read again, because I'd like you to read a passage that's about Edith and some of her troubles and the way she is. I mean, she can go into a bathtub for a week, Edith, right, and not come out, or she does all sorts of strange things. But just to talk about the names of your characters. So there's Edith, there's Kurt. Those are, more normal names, shall we say? But there's some very unusual names like Skalde and Myces. And where do those names come from?
So I always find it hard to name my characters because every name has also a history to it, and then I was like, okay, some people I don't know how it happened, but Edith and Kurt, it was clear to me that they have these names, and then Skalde, she had a different name in the first version of the book, but it sounded too soft, and I wanted something that's more harsh kind of. So I decided that that her name is gonna be Skalde. And I didn't really, I don't know, I think I just made it up. But then when I published the book, people came to me and said, I don't remember quite right, but in, I think, Swedish or Skalde.
Oh, I looked it up. Old Norse.
Okay.
It means poet.
Yes. So it's totally suitable for her because she is also a writer and she tries to write stories. So and I always like that about writing, that sometimes you do something, without thinking, and then it has a meaning. So
in English, to scald something is to burn them.
Okay. Yeah.
But just I don't know if it's appropriate, but
No,
and what about Myces? Where does that come from?
So that means girl, little girl, and then I think, I don't know, in another language, I think in African language.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
It almost sounds Greek, like Isis and Myces.
yeah.
So let's read from chapter 16 about Edith, if that's okay with you.
Ja. In diesen ersten Wochen bekam ich Edith kaum zu Gesicht. Dass Myces bei uns im Haus lebte, schien sie nicht einmal zu bemerken. Wie zuvor schlief sie die meiste Zeit auf dem Sofa oder sie zog sich ins Badezimmer zurück, wo sie Stunden damit zubrachte, in der Wanne zu liegen. Einmal, als ich mit Myces im Garten saß, hatte ich jedoch das starke Gefühl, dass sie uns durch eines der Fenster beobachtete. Ich blickte zum Haus, doch alle Vorhänge waren geschlossen und nichts bestätigte meinen Verdacht. Ist Edith je eine andere gewesen? Fragte mich Myces beim Abendbrot, während sie mit der Gabel eine Kartoffel zerdrückte. Ich sagte ihr, dass Edith sich seit langem so verhalte. Daraufhin wollte Myces von mir wissen, warum Edith nie mit uns esse. Ich erklärte ihr, dass Edith es vorziehe, auf Nahrung zu verzichten. Aber wie kann sie so überleben? Ich sagte, nicht alles lässt sich logisch erklären. Ich wollte nicht weiter über Edith sprechen.
I barely saw Edith in those first few weeks. She didn't seem to even notice that Myces was living in the house with us. She continued to mostly sleep on the sofa, or she withdrew into the bathroom, where she spent hours in the bath. But once, while I was sitting in the garden with Myces, I had the strong feeling that she was watching us through one of the windows. I looked at the house, but all the curtains were closed and nothing confirmed my suspicions. Has Edith ever been different? Myces asked me once during supper while she mashed a potato with her fork. I told her that Edith had been behaving like that for a long time. Then Myces wanted to know why Edith never ate with us. I explained to her that Edith preferred to do without food. But how does she survive? I said, not everything can be explained logically. I didn't want to talk about Edith anymore. This book is written in very short sentences, at least in English, and it sounds the same in German. Why did you choose to use such short sentences?
I think it's like it just comes to me naturally to put things very short and to and also it suits so for a long time I didn't know how to tell the story, and it was like maybe I have like someone who's telling the story and Skalde is just a person in it. But then I was like, no, Skalde has to tell the story, and Skalde, she is like, she's someone who's observing a lot, and she tries to make sense out what she sees. So for me, it's also like yeah, she's just, you know, I don't know, Bericht. I don't know the English word right now, but like a journal thing that she does here. So that's why it suited for me, for her to her writing. And it's more like little pictures in my head. And also I think Skalde has like pictures in her head. So maybe that's, yeah.
And it's true, it's like poetry, which often has short sentences.
Yeah.
Some people
And
have
it's also
reacted. Yes,
yeah,
go ahead.
because you know she reads a lot, and so, and yeah, I think that's where all her language comes from. So yeah.
Some people have reacted to the book saying there's an absence of emotion. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I find it really interesting because for me in the book there's so many emotions. I think you have to look closely to see them. So they're kind of hidden, and it's because the people in the book, they think if they say and if they show emotions, they are vulnerable, and they, you know, so they try to hide them, but they're still there in little gestures and how they say things or what they. There's also a lot of nature description in the book, and it's also for me that you can see that there's emotions in it.
Yeah, I
So
don't necessarily agree with the person who made that comment. I think it's all between the lines.
yes, and I think that's how, you know, how it works. So you have to look so closely to see the emotions, and I think, yeah, and Skalden, yeah.
Yeah. And somebody also said they needed to know more about the purpose of isolating, more about why the town is so scared of outsiders, and you know, how old Skalda is and where Edith came from. Like, this person wanted much more information, but I imagine that you left things so vague on purpose, of course.
Yes, because I think it's always, I prefer if I read books if there's space between it, you know, if you don't, there's not an explanation for everything, because then you start to think and you go really into it. And that's the nice thing about reading, isn't it? That you have to use your own brain. So, and I think, yeah, it's also nice, I think, because people read it and they have different versions of it. So it shouldn't be like it's the same book for everybody. So some people, for example, say Edith is not a good mother, and some people, they say no, so, and I like that about books, you know, that they're like this different ways to read it, kind of. Yeah.
I realize you didn't start out saying I'm going to write a book that's going to be a bestseller and that millions of people are going to read, but did you have a goal with your book? Was there something you wanted readers to experience?
Yeah, I think I wanted to write about being an outsider. So I think because it's not really something, I think everybody has experienced it in some, you know, point in their lives. So for me, for example, in my school, I was always the outsider, and I wanted to put this experience in a book or and to write about it, because I think everybody can relate to it and think, yeah, that was something I think. But and I see now that it's always part of my books, kind of, because yeah, so I think it just
Because you have a second book out now, right?
yes, yes,
Gegenüber,
yes.
which
And I
means
write the third one, and it's also part of it, it's also about it. So yeah.
Right, and the Kriegerin is it's not out in English yet, but it's coming out in English. But it's about a friendship between two women in a violent and threatening world. So you can see it's kind of a sequel to Milk Teeth.
Yeah.
In 2024, Milk Teeth was made into a film directed by Sophia Bush. How did you feel about that, about being made into a film?
I was really honored. I never thought about it would happen. So when my agent called me and said, yeah, there's interest that, yeah, people want to make a film out of it, I was like, oh, wow, okay. And then the pandemic was, and I was, okay, maybe it will, you know, maybe it will not
Won't
happen.
happen, right?
Yeah. So, but then, yeah, but then it happened, and it was really nice because Sophia Bush, it's her first real long-term film. I don't know if you say it like that, but and she
A feature film,
yeah,
a
a
full
feature
length
film
film.
before she did just short film. So I liked that about it, you know, because it was also my first novel, and it was and then I met her, and she was, and I told her that for the book I made like a mood board. So I collected pictures that reminded me of the atmosphere and the characters and stuff like that, and put it all in like a Dropbox folder. And I said, like, yeah, maybe you want to look at it because, you know, you can feel like how I see the book in my head. And she was, yeah, but just wait for some. I will at first I do it for myself, and then I will look at your pictures. And then she did it, and then we put them together, and then I saw, okay, they're so similar. So this felt really good to me that I, you know, knew there's a person who has the same aesthetic.
Vision.
Vision. Yes.
And do you feel like the way she portrayed your characters, or the actors portrayed your characters, is that how you envisioned them? Is it close to your vision?
Yeah, so I think she also changed things, but I think that's good, you know, because it's not the same thing. It's a film now, and it's also her film, not my film. So
you didn't work on the script, or were you involved?
They asked me if I want to work, but I said it's good to give it in her hands. So I read the script like twice, but not really, you know, just like made little comments. Because I also thought it's annoying if there's like a writer always in the back and like, no, I want this and that. And so yeah, and yeah, that's how it worked.
And are you pleased with the result?
Yes, so I really liked the movie, the film, and because I think for me the atmosphere is really right, and also it was crazy. They went to the set, and there was a scene where I was looking at Skalde, and she talked to someone, and then Edith, the mother, came, but I didn't see her before, so she came, and it was like really Edith, you know, the real Edith. So it was quite impressive. So
I'm sure. Before we wind up the conversation, maybe we can just read one more section. I thought towards the end of the book, chapter 54, it sounds like there are millions of chapters, but they're very short chapters.
Yeah.
So if you want to go ahead.
Der Vorrat, den ich in den Jahren zuvor angelegt hatte, wurde weniger. Maisis hatte immer Hunger. Manchmal fand ich sie zwischen den Mahlzeiten in der Speisekammer, in der Hand einen Zwieback oder getrocknetes Obst. Von dem, was ich ihr gab, wurde sie nicht satt. Immer wieder zählte ich die Konserven, die Kartoffeln, kochte dünnere Suppen. Immerhin gab es noch die Kaninchen. Außer Len und Gösta wollte niemand mehr etwas mit mir tauschen. Sie machten mir noch nicht einmal auf, wenn ich mit den Kanistern bei ihnen vor der Tür stand. Solange Maisis noch immer ihre Milchzähne hatte, traute mir niemand. Und ich konnte nichts dagegen tun.
The supplies depleted. Maisis was always hungry. Sometimes I would find her between mealtimes in the pantry, a rusk or a piece of dried fruit in her hand. She was never satisfied by what I gave her. I counted the tin cans, the potatoes, over and over again, cooked thinner soups. There were still the rabbits, at least. Apart from Len and Goethe, no one wanted to exchange things with me anymore. They wouldn't even open the door when I stood outside with canisters of mulch. As long as Maisie still had her milk teeth, no one trusted me, and I couldn't do anything about it. So that's from Milk Teeth by Helene Bukowski. And I'd like to thank you so much for being here today for this conversation, and wish you luck with future books and future films perhaps too. And also thanks to the Goethe-Institut, Washington and Montreal.